Hello and welcome to Worthy Watchers Weekly, the weekly podcast where we go in depth on anything within the motion art medium, TVs, animation, movies, etc. It's all game here. Of course, I'm joined by my bro from, I guess, my Mo, Ransom Tyson. Hello. Nice. So one of the things that we were talking about over the last week is, of course, the Zach Snyder cut just was revealed to be officially in existence, as it was long rumored to be. And HBO Max, hey, they're going to allow Zach Snyder to premiere his 90% complete cut of Justice League, which is very exciting for fans of actual comics and just fans of cinema alike. Ransom, what's going on with that Zach Snyder cut before we go into the real topic of the day?
From what I understand, Zach Snyder cut, for those who don't know what happened with Zach Snyder, he had to step off the set and stop being a director during Justice League because his son had passed away.
Incredibly tragic.
Very tragic. So Josh Whedon came in and finished the movie. So if you kind of feel this weird sense of dark tones with then cheesy, corny stuff, you can tell which one is Zack Snyder and which one is Josh Whedon. And so everyone, since this movie came out, they're like, oh, well, what if we just got like a Snyder cut and just saw only the things that Zack Snyder did? And at first people were being serious, and then it just kind of like started becoming a joke, a run-on joke, funny enough. Warner Bros was like, okay, enough people are asking for it, let's do it. From what I heard, I think they're doing like a couple reshoots.
So I don't know exactly about the reshoots, to be totally honest. I can neither confirm or deny that. I wouldn't be surprised. It was 90% complete. At that point, we're going to, and this will be part of the conversation we're about to have, but it's like, if that is the case, then at what point do we just call this a remake? Right? But 90% complete, that comes into that weird, awkward territory. So I don't know, it's definitely one of those crazy things where like the internet had rumored it for so long. There was reports that this thing existed for so long. And then we had two sides of the fence, right? A lot of great people that were very staunch supporters, ralliers, to the kind of like to generate interest to the cause, so to speak. In fact, one of the Facebook groups that we belong a part of was International, Super Friends or whatever, and they've long had the banner release the Snyder Cut, right? And there's a lot of good people that have wanted this, but then, of course, as the internet does, it devolved into a little bit of madness and chaos as well. And there were a lot of assholes that just wanted to shit on a lot of people and bring up a lot of derogatory comments on behalf of the Snyder Cut too. So, it was just a kind of a mess. So it is interesting now that HBO Max is like, okay, the fans have spoken enough about it. Let's go ahead and do it. And I think HBO Max, their streaming service, is the real reason why this is happening. I don't think it would have come to full theatrical release again.
True. Yeah. I mean, it's cool that they're being able to get a platform. I think it's awesome the fact that Zack Snyder does actually want to come back and like promote that. If he's not like doing the extra cast, like production stuff on it.
The cast have been huge supporters of this from the beginning too.
Yeah, so it's cool to see that this, like, there's definitely backing, there's definitely support for wanting this thing to happen, and it creates the sense of community for this movie and for fans of DC. But I think going into our topic today, the question is, what will the Snyder Cut be what people are looking for? Because if we look at other movies, we'll see two different sides to it.
Exactly. What is the point of re-edits, right? Because one of the things as film fans we love discussing is the fact that when movies come out to the theater, they are a single solitary experience, um, kind of like a moment in time, right? And the reason why these edits are so important is because film editing changes massively how the story not only impacts you, but sometimes the entire meaning of what the movie is. And so there is a real good reason for preserving the movie's original intent as is, right? And I think what we really have to ask ourselves when we look at re-edits and what their purpose really is, I think it's for two different types of camps. And those two different types can be successful. They're not always successful, but they can be. And then there's a third camp in which it always seems like that's a bad idea, almost all the time. One, director artist integrity. Sometimes when movies come out, the time frame of when a movie needs to be released to the theater is a part of the reason why a movie may or may not have its initial success. I think a very perfect example of this is Blade Runner. Blade Runner was a movie that was released and it was plagued with a ton of set issues. It was over budget. It was kind of a mess. And when Ridley Scott released his original theatrical cut, he was pressured by the production company at the time that were releasing the film to make a film that audiences could easily understand. It was very ambiguous, right? It was a little bit ahead of its time, a lot of people could say. And so the original theatrical ending, in my opinion, is actually one of my least favorite sci-fi movies of all time. And it's because the movie has this very arbitrary guy gets the girl mentality and then they go away and try and run away. It's like a reverse Casablanca, you know? And who wants that? Casablanca is great because it doesn't happen, right? In a lot of ways. And there was a way to preserve that integrity, but also introduce a really interesting conversation the way that Ridley Scott had intended it. And that's what he did years later by releasing a new edit of the film that was the theatrical cut. And then he came to it for a third time to release his final complete vision, the final cut. And the final cut, with its additions of a lot of its, high HD effects and the re-edits of the film to a more digital medium, really make for a movie that is infinitely rewatchable in this day and age. And so that artistic integrity is important.
Yeah. Well, and
go ahead.
I was gonna say the third the third cut, the final cut, really does feel more like an adaptation to what he was inspired by to make the film. And I think that's what makes it so much better, is the fact that you really do get that sense of what it's talking about with the dreams going into how that affects him as like is he a human, is he a replicant,
and it's
knows?
more true of what the film was trying to speak about, right? Again, a reason why a re-edit works is if there was a concept that was inside of the movie already that just didn't get out all the way, maybe in its original edit. And I think that's the reason why Blade Runner edits are so important. And I think it's also important to talk about each version of them because you see the progression in each installment.
Yeah, and whenever Blade Runner is shown in like re-shown in theaters, it's always the final cut, because because people totally recognize that this is the one, this is Ridley Scott's vision of what he wanted to do all along, and it really does feel like a more complete movie.
Absolutely. And now to bring up a case evidence in which this first reason doesn't always work out so well, Star Wars, A New Hope, or just Star Wars. Literally, Lucas felt as if he was ahead of the curve, right? And Star Wars was ahead of the curve in so many
Oh yeah.
respects,
Oh yeah.
especially for its time. But he was like, oh, now I've got the technology to add in a ton of CGI. And I can think of nothing worse than a single shot in the movie where there's all this great activity going around in Tatooine, in Mos Eisley.
Hmm.
And when they're about to be talked to by the stormtrooper guard and interrogated on one of the security checks, this like huge ass of this walking, dinosaur like creature goes completely in the shot. And if I could do this and replicate this on the camera, this is what it looks like for 2 seconds. Like, you can't see anything except like the outside. Like, why would you do that?
And that goes across the screen as you're seeing the stormtroopers halting, but you can't see it.
Yeah, and it's not a transition. It's
It's
just in the
yeah.
fucking way. And then also Jabba. We didn't need Jabba in that movie. We don't need him until when he appears in Return of the Jedi. Sometimes it's better to reference something and not see them than have the reality of what it is, because it just looks, cartoonish for all the wrong reasons. And
Yeah.
so sometimes a artist's vision can kind of get in way of their original intent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely showcases you could totally understand someone thinking, having the idea that, oh, I need to do touch ups to this, now that I have the technology, people will like this more. But it definitely is done in a way that just feels like it's there more to show off and showcase that technology without having an artistic intent to it. Because it really does show that there's no care in transitions in that, and it takes away from the gravity of this of the plot moving along,
Right.
because you're so distracted by all of this CGI,
Right.
you don't understand what's going on, and you're like,
Yeah. No, 100%. And I do want to come back to a few more examples of that later, but I also wanted to bring up the second of the three examples of why a re-edit happens, and that's fan outcry. We obviously are
mm,
seeing it right now with Zach Snyder cut, maybe for the better, but there have been times in the past too where fans have clamored for production companies to re-release films in different versions too. A lot of people have always tried to bring that up with things, such as Star Wars. And I think one of the really cool things that fans can do sometimes, and this is the power of the age that we live in, is when fans apply so much care to what they believe in that they go in on themselves and re-edit something on behalf of the fans. No, for no monetary gain or anything like that, just to see what could have been in a different light. And one of, I think, the best cases for this is actually Star Wars again, and one of the fan re-edits of The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith.
mm,
This edit combines all three of those movies into one contained package. And what they do is they use the elements of the first that were just plot points that needed to be said to increase Anakin's character. They put it out into the fold. Same thing with Attack of the Clones. They focus on Anakin's character there and the relationship between Obi-Wan. And then in the third film, they really hone in on the relationship of Obi-Wan and Anakin as well, which is just an interesting concept, because one of the flaws of the prequels was always, okay, there's a lot of reasons or lack thereof in some ways that Anakin would turn over to the dark side. There's almost too many things going on. So there's not enough attention on this or that. It was just a combination of things. And one of the powers of movies is focusing in on a single idea and bringing out all of the detail of that to the forefront.
mm. Now, but going off that though,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
um as a fan, it's one thing to have like a fan edit and have that be like really cool, but when you're um talking about a professional crew going into post production, seeing these things, and also thinking about whether you're doing a theatrical release or now that it's so easy to put things out onto streaming services, how the question comes to be, how much care is being taken to actually have that be something that is worth watching, that is worth getting a subscription service for, to see that content.
Well, and that's the interesting thing here because I think the Zack Snyder cut is a combination of two, and the third reason that I will go into shortly, why it's happening. Yeah, maybe a little bit of the first. Maybe it's a combo of all three when I think about it. But the big one I think is the fan outcry. There's no reason why the production company would care about this if there wasn't a fan outcry for it. And I think fan edits and fan outcry for films can be dangerous. The reason why is because they oftentimes can be a mob of personality rather than a specific reason for doing something. That's why normally my my opinions on re-edits tend to go for, well, is it really more of the artistic vision? Because in my mind, like, yes, movies are meant to make money, but I also think that film is a conversation. And I think it's a discussion of what someone's trying to say, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I prefer it when edits happen from the original intent of the person making it. And I think that's the interesting place we come to ourselves in with the Zack Snyder cut, because it includes the element of, okay, we have the director that was originally hired on to make the film wanting to really make his version and to get his shot that he kind of missed out for tragic, awful reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the fan outcry of Justice League as it came out. Not the best movie. We want something a little bit better.
Yeah.
And now you've got this third part of it, which is when the company that's releasing the film, that technically owns the distribution rights, goes in and says, no, 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 no. Or the production company, the one that's trying to make the film, comes in and says, no, 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 no. This is not going the way that we wanted it to go. And I think of another great example, Star Wars, right? The infinite issue machine that it is, Rogue One. Rogue One. The ending of that film was massively changed from the original intent because of the involvement of Star Wars, possibly for the better, possibly for the better. But it also can go awry too, because another example of it is the Han Solo effect, right? Where we had Solo come in, and we don't know what that movie would have been with the two original directors, but they had shot a good half of the movie by the time they were fired, and they had to redo everything under wow, why am I forgetting the director's name?
Ron Howard.
Thank you, Ron Howard. And it's crazy to imagine what might have been,
Yeah.
The Zack Snyder cut combines this element of popular interest, of artistic intent, and production failures that had occurred on the original intent.
Mm-hmm.
When all three things are speaking that way, I think that is what really makes a movie worth re-editing. Especially, like, I don't see why not, if we have all three of those elements. If there's one of the three, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why I wanted to bring up those three reasons, because I think when re-edits happen, you have to be careful.
Oh yeah.
Because what happens if we start just saying, like, to every single experience that we have, oh no, I want to redo.
Mm-hmm.
Movies need to have their own birth and death. without being put back into the Lazarus pit every single time and redone.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe that's also the reason why most of the time remakes aren't so good either.
Yeah. Well, and the big thing to me too is, you know, with the Snyder cut, I do feel like it went from being a serious like request from fans to being a bit of a run-on joke. And then now that we have
Yes.
it, like everyone's back to like feeling excited for it. But also too, it's it's a bit of a mutual acceptance too that a lot of fans weren't happy with Batman versus Superman, which Zack
We're not
Snyder
asking
did.
for a re-edit of that, are we? Even though it could
E-
probably use one.
exactly. And so with that property and Justice League, who's to say that won't be the same situation as Batman versus Superman?
Well, and to bring in another kind of idea here too, when we allow mob mentality to kind of dictate what is or isn't, or what should or shouldn't happen in
Mm-hmm.
these experiences, I think we run into a problem. That's why we've got to be careful with this. The Snyder Cut, again, it's a lucky one where we have all three kind of elements that speak to a reason why this film deserves a re-edit. Again, we got to be scary of that too, because look at a movie like Brazil, right? Uh, Terry Gilliam is like a crazy mad genius, right?
Yeah.
That movie is super ahead of its time, but it's also really hard for especially a mass appeal approach to come to that movie because it is kind of dark. It's super crazy satire, and it's not really a happy movie
Oh,
in its original
no.
form. But when you look behind the scenes of it, the company at the time that owned the rights to distribute the movie, they wanted to come in and re-edit the film so that more mass appeal could go to this film. It would be
Mm-hmm.
easier to watch. And there's an edit out there of the movie under this approach that changes the ending entirely, in which the guy gets the girl and it's not a dream. And it kind of ruins the point.
Yeah.
And William didn't fight tooth and nail for that, and didn't have I believe it was the SAG at the time. I think it was SAG, or maybe the Film Directors Guild, but one of the guilds at the time that had given it high accolades before it had even been released. And so the company was pressured by like all of those directors and producers to release the film in its original intent. So the artistic vision won
Mm-hmm.
out. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say here is maybe the mob would have wanted that easier version because it is easier to watch, right? It gives you a happy ending, and it should be more, it should cater to most people more. But that ruins the point, you
Yeah.
know? So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why I want to bring this up, because it's like we can't just allow for people's mob mentalities to control that, and for even in some cases the production companies to, for the sake of more money, release and change the way the movie is artistically. I think if I had to list my priorities between artistic vision, uh, fan outcry, and production company distributor rights, I lean on the first. If it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have that first reason, don't do it at all.
Yeah. Like
Absolutely.
yeah.
Because I'll tell you right now, I respect a hell of a lot more something like a fail with George Lucas and his sci-fi skullduggery or CGI skullduggery, rather than someone changing the ending to a movie like Brazil, or
Mm-hmm.
for, in the case of Blade Runner, pressuring Ridley Scott to make a movie that just loses its teeth because of its ending. You
Yeah.
know,
Well,
um, It's just it's I don't like that at all. It hurts. You know, it
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why Marvel has been so successful lately, is because they have a sense of artistic vision of people wanting to take these properties and put them into a real life situations to make it feel more personal for the audience.
Well, and two, you know, we have to remember that not every Marvel movie has been, you know,
Oh,
received with
true.
wide aplomb. I mean,
Yeah.
for God's sakes, they still allow, you know, the Hulk to exist. That movie is kind of eh. Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, which
Oh,
had fans of comics in an uproar when it released.
yeah.
And did they change it or redo it? No.
No.
They just said maybe this is that and maybe this is this. And we're looking at the way the movie the fans are wanting things in the future, but
Mhm.
keeping that film still what it is. It's a
Exactly.
great
Yeah.
balance and holistic approach to, at one hand, appeasing fan mentality, but not succumbing to it.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. And, you know, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think definitely, and not even just going for the Snyder cut, but just for WB moving forward with DC movies, you know. I definitely feel like they should have that balance.
Well, and I think there was a problem too with this where they were obsessed for a long time with this really annoying buzzword that film fans and film outlets used a lot in the early 2010s, which is the word dark.
Mm.
That overuse of style is, I think, the reason why a lot of the DC movies don't really work. And that's a little bit due to Snyder in some cases, actually true.
Yeah.
But it's also because they allowed Snyder to obsess over that, I think.
Hmm.
And they wanted it so badly themselves. So before you knew it, right, they had gone this all the way in. And then right as things might have been getting interesting with that, they did a 180
Yeah.
because I said, oh no, dark isn't the way to go anymore. Marvel isn't dark anymore. Oh, we can't have dark movies.
Yeah.
And again, it's like it's misunderstanding the word dark and actually like what the vibe really is. Like Snyder's going for. It's just ridiculous. So, you know, I when I come down to it, again, I think re-edits make sense if at the forefront you've got artistic intent, the second is production, and the third priority would be the fan outcry. Where do you stand on that list, Ransom? Where do you stand on that list of priorities? And do you feel like re-edit should happen?
Um. So I definitely lean more towards that artistic vision. I think that is the biggest. That is the biggest thing. Um. You know, like as much as um. Well, I no, I wouldn't call George Lucas's revisions as artistic vision because
Oh,
I mean,
really?
yeah, because it feels more like they were done for like putting out more editions of Star Wars, you
So you
know?
think it's actually a little bit more of a production reason than an artistic one?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
because
he did end up becoming his own company.
exactly. Yeah. So I feel like he definitely transitioned for himself to more to that production part of that production's perspective of looking at Star Wars rather than the artistic uh, perception. But
Well, I think one of the things you can get so mad about him too is now that I really am thinking about this, the worst part about it is it's been up to fans to preserve and produce and release the original movies as they were.
Mhm.
you know. And the fact that those cuts are so hard to find that you have to go onto like fan forums to find like a Blu-ray version of like Star Wars 1976, right, version, is because Lucas doesn't want them to exist, right?
Oh yeah.
Which sucks, because it's like, I'd be mad if I didn't know that Blade Runner's theatrical release existed and I didn't watch it, because I care enough about it that I want to see all of the intents,
Mhm.
right? I see how it could go wrong. But you have the other version that you can see that is so great. And for the purpose of film discussion, learning, and growing, you can't just erase out quote unquote mistakes or lack
Mhm.
thereof, because
Yeah.
of the reasons that we're saying, where it's just like the original intent was a little bit more artistic, perhaps.
Yeah. Um, so going into to my thoughts on reshoots, I think that originality is the
King.
most, yeah, that's the top priority. That's the most important thing there is originality. Um, but at the same time, um, originality changes. Um, but it's important to always keep what you had there, you know? That's why I think so many people respect what Blade Runner is. The fact that they even put out in a box set all three versions of Blade Runner, so you can see each version, see the adaptations done to it.
Exactly. If you're gonna redo what you did before, reorganize it and re-edit, because that's the power of editing. That's what makes
Mhm.
it so unique and so powerful in movies. Provide all the case examples of it and allow
Yeah.
them to exist.
Yeah. Because I am definitely one to believe that change is important. Um, change is inevitable, but you also have to respect that uh, the past is there before, and it can't be erased.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself, Ransom. Perfect. So I think that's a great way to end out this discussion, because, again, don't erase the past. That is what
Yes.
we care about when it comes down to this discussion. That's the fear. That's the
Mm-hmm.
fear.
Yep.
So before we close things out officially, Ransom, do you have a worthy watch of the week?
Oh, worthy watch. I was trying to think about it, and I was like, oh man, I don't
Yeah.
know what to go with. But I think I myself am gonna go with Avatar: Last Airbender. It's on
Hey,
Netflix.
Netflix.
It's on
Yeah.
Netflix. It bothers me that it's in full screen.
Oh,
Um,
is it?
yeah, it's in that box format.
Oh, no. Okay, never mind. That makes
And
sense, unfortunately.
yeah, and it's really like, for some reason for me it's super distracting to look at it that way. I'm like, God, this is so, like, just take up the entire screen. I'm fine with it.
That's how it came out, though.
I
And,
know.
and that's why they have it like that, is because if they were to put it into wide, they would probably have to redo a lot. Like, they would have to do a digital upgrade for that
Yeah,
show entirely.
yeah.
So hey, Ransom, keep bringing it up though, and get those fans on that, because
Oh yeah, release the widescreen cut. But I think it's only the first season that's like that. I think when you get to the second and third, it's more
do they
adapted.
change perspective? Do they change the ratio?
I think so.
Because I know Korra is in a more palatable format for sure.
Yeah. So, but either way, you know, the fact that it's back on Netflix, people are starting to rewatch it again, and I think it is so cool. It is so cool. The fact that, when this came out, I was about 6 or 7 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember like I remember watching it at like friends' houses, and
We didn't have cable.
yeah, and I remember like I was like, it's cool, like it's all right. I wasn't too into it at first, but more and more I got older, like I started to see like, oh, this actually has some really cool stuff in it. Um, but like it's still been like a good like decade or so since I've watched it, and um, it's so awesome to see those kids who grew up with it go back and rewatch it and see how much activism and progressive storytelling there is in Avatar: The Last Airbender. But yeah, and seeing all of these uh, all of these people on social media start talking about it and seeing how important all these story developments are for these characters, um, and seeing how they completely evolve in only these 3 seasons of storytelling. um, you really do get this, like it really is a beautiful showcase of how important stories can be, um, and how it can affect us, even as children, and then coming back to these stories as adults and seeing how much of an impact they had, so we could understand like big, like mature topics.
Yeah, no, agreed 100%. And I'm sorry to kind of like start to steamroll into mine here, but to couple on that conversation, I think that's one of the coolest things when I rewatch things like The Next Generation for Star Trek and Voyager. They both had their season, well, I should say series finales, anniversaries this past week, which was
Mm.
really cool. Voyager, in fact, has gotten so much outcry lately from fans rewatching it, that on Tuesday this next week, we're going to have a panel with some of the cast. I think almost all of them of the
Oh
of the
yeah.
cast of Voyager, which is super fun and cool. And rewatching that show, it's exactly like Avatar, where you recognize that they inserted so much interesting conversation at an early time. When you're young and you watch this stuff, it's more of introducing a concept rather than going into it because you don't really have awareness of it.
Mm-hmm.
The show itself has brought that awareness. But when you rewatch it, you realize what that awareness was then to where you are now. And you notice a progression of understanding and conceptualization that you can now have when rewatching these things. And
Yeah.
I think that is infinitely rewarding. So I'm happy so many fans are doing that with Avatar, especially because that show, it really creates a holistic approach to conversating those topics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'll admit, while I'll say Cora brings up way more of them, Cora is a little bit more in your face, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
subtlety can speak volumes. That's all I'll
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. um I mean, I definitely like both. Admittedly, have only watched the first season of Korra. I haven't watched the other ones. And it makes me sad because I understand they like go into more like of the spiritual stuff with the Avatar, and I'm
They
like, oh, that
return.
sounds amazing.
Okay, they return on the last season though to politics, and I really gotta buy the Blu-ray because the season 4 of Korra is, I think, better than both of those series. Like
Really?
season 1 through 3 is not as good as the last Airbender. Season 4 of Korra is incredible because they go into the way politics. You remember what you were saying about wow, this turned into an interesting discussion here. Remember what you were saying about how when you're watching what's the political show? You referenced it at the beginning of the cast here on Hulu.
Plot Against America.
Yes, how Plot Against America can kind of bring in concepts of how nice words and good deeds, quote unquote, can kind of be twisted and repurposed into really terrible ones. That's what the Legend of Korra goes into at season 4, where they really explore how a nation can want to spread its influence and its modernization, so to speak, to lead the world. But maybe it's a little bit Alexander the Great, because we have a love of Alexander the Great that maybe is a little bit too much of a love, and not really realizing, no, he conquered. He conquered people, and that involves death.
Yeah.
And that there needs to be another way. That's all I'll say. And I love that conversation. So
that's awesome. Yeah. I'll definitely have to.
So go watch The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, everybody.
Yeah.
There's your worthy watches of the week.
All right.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for watching the cast. Let us know your comments and your opinions on re-edits, recuts of movies. Are they worthwhile? Do they provide something interesting? And should they be done? Let us know in the comments below, or hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, @WorthyWatchers, to get in on the conversation. Let your friends know as well where to find us. Hopefully more podcast streaming services soon. And hey, I'll try and maybe actually edit the video this week. Who knows, for YouTube.
Yeah.
So thanks again for watching, guys, and we will see you on the next Worthy Watchers Week.
See you then.